Hi, this is Doug Morrison welcoming you back to another episode of Teach for Effect, in which we'll continue looking at the 7 learning factors. Now, we began this series by looking at the learning factor of readiness, the idea that your students need to be mentally, physically, and emotionally ready to learn before you start your lessons. From there, we moved on to recency, that the last things taught or practiced are the best remembered. If you missed either of those, then please check them out. I've posted links to them in the description below. Today, we're going to look at yet another important learning factor, the learning factor of relationship. Now, to apply this factor means that you're always going to work in a logical progression from the known to the unknown. This means that you're always going to start your teaching from something your student already knows. It's very important to remember that the unknown cannot explain the unknown. In order for your students to learn, you have to build a bridge from where they are and what they know to where you need them to be. You have to somehow tie the new material into something that the student already knows and understands, and then proceed in logical, graded steps until they master the new material. One of the best ways to do this is through the use of illustrations and comparisons. Have you ever noticed how when someone's trying to explain something to you, they'll try to find something that you already know or understand to do so? Well, for example, if they're describing a setting to you, they might say, well, the room was about twice the size of this one. Or, well, her dress was about the same color as the shirt that guy over there is wearing. We naturally try to relate something new or not yet understood to something that can be seen or understood. It's the way our minds work, and we can use this to great advantage in our teaching. If you use illustrations, make sure that they can be understood by your students. When I taught in Eastern Europe, I once had to explain what happened to a pilot when he can't see the horizon. Now, when pilots are in that situation, the fluid in their inner ears can send confusing signals to their bodies. These signals can trick them into thinking that maybe they're turning left when actually they're turning right, or it could convince them that they're climbing when in fact they're descending. In order to teach that, I often illustrated it by asking my students if they'd ever been stopped at a traffic light in a car when the vehicle beside them started moving. For a few seconds, you start to think you're moving, and you might even start pumping your brakes in order to stop your already parked car. Well, that illustration works great here, but over there, some of them had never driven a car. So I used the illustration of being in a train stopped at the station when the train beside them started moving. I asked them if they'd ever experienced that and been tricked into thinking that their train was moving, not the one next to them. Since they'd all ridden trains, they could easily understand that. So, take some time, get to know your students. Find out what they already know, what experience they already have, or what basic knowledge they might have that relates to what you're about to teach them. Your students need to know how what they're learning fits in and builds upon what they already know. They need to know it's not something new and completely unrelated to the rest of their lives. Here are some tips that you can incorporate into your teaching to make use of this factor. First of all, plan your lessons in a logical sequence. Work from the known to the unknown. Start with the easy and work to the difficult. From the concrete, you can move to the abstract. From the simple to the complex, and from the familiar to the unfamiliar. Also, review basic knowledge before you proceed to the unknown. Build their confidence with questions that they can answer that show that they already have some basic knowledge of what they're about to learn. It'll greatly encourage them and make it much easier for them. Now, something else you can do is to present the lessons in stages. And at the end of each stage, stop and confirm that they understand it and can answer some questions on it. Perform a mini test. And of course, the length of each stage will depend on how complicated the material is and how old your students are. And finally, use examples and comparisons that are familiar to your students to show them that this material isn't really that much different from what they already know. It's just one small step past what they already understand. Do you teach on a regular basis? If you teach anyone for any reason, be it homeschool, Sunday school, someone you instruct on your job, you know what a huge responsibility it is to properly instruct other people. As a flight instructor, I was held accountable for the success of my students. But even if I hadn't been, I would have felt the pressure of having to ensure that what I was teaching was actually being learned. Maybe you're in the same situation. Well, Over the years, I learned from other teachers, from books and courses, from refresher courses, from my own experience, and of course, from good old trial and error. Through all that, I've developed what I call the Teaching for Effect system. If you're serious about having an impact on the lives of your students, I know that it can be a huge help to you in your teaching. I can teach it one-on-one or in a group setting, live or online. Or, if you prefer, I also have an online course that you can study at your own pace. It comes complete with a workbook and homework assignments that'll help you to introduce these learning principles into your own teaching. You can check out the online course in the link below the video, or contact me at teachforeffect@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, and share to help me out, and see you next time.